with our analyst desk.
Thank you, gentlemen. 25 minutes and 30-second first game of the series. I mean, you're going to feel great if you're on Cloud9 side of the Rift. You are a little bit worried if you're on TSM side of the Rift. I do want to rush us through the game a little bit, starting in Champions League, because there's actually a fair amount to talk about for a 25-minute game. We saw that TSM was looking to push Rush off of a comfortable champion. Once the Gragas was taken out by C9 themselves, TSM get rid of the Nidalee and the Lee Sin. Kindred, haven't seen him play that, and yet he seemed rather effective.
Yeah, and they first picked the Kindred, and it definitely paid off for Rush. He got an okay start, and then he was able to actually get a decent amount of marks that game. But I want to talk about how it was in the draft, because you targeted Rush, and then they banned out the Gragas and said, okay, well, I'm either playing Lee Sin first pick, or I'm either playing Kindred first pick, because there aren't enough bans left, because you're banning out Hyze Morgana. So it's not a complete dedication to banning out the jungle, and that's what ended up biting them, because he's got that Kindred up his sleeve.
Yeah, it feels bad from TSM side where you pretty clearly prep a lot for Rush. He's their early game playmaker. They probably were thinking if we can take him off his comfort picks, we can maybe get a lead early and
maybe get the new out of him.
Yeah, nothing like that happened. They got destroyed.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like, Sunskern's happy to play Lee Sin. He played it a whole bunch so far this year, and if you go down the tier list of junglers, Kindred is multiple steps above Lee Sin, right? Lee Sin's actually a contestable champion, so I think that was a misstep overall. But it was interesting as you play it forward, okay, C9 Rush picks the Kindred, then you get Poppy and Azir, which are arguably the two best solo, it's debatable, but arguably the two best solo laners left up at this point, and TSM gets cream of the crop, and you're like, all right, sick, like this is set up for a really good composition. And the problem is it never mattered what the comp was, because the entire game, TSM just overstepped and got picked off.
Right, exactly. So let's move into the game. We saw the double TP as well as having TF on your team to add a third, essentially, coming in from Cloud9. And before the game, we talked about where do these teams get their leads. Cloud9 is going to get them through kills early in the game, whereas TSM is looking to outfarm. And that's pretty much how the game played out. Early turret dive by Cloud9, traded kill for kill. It wasn't perfectly executed. But I want to pull us into our replay. 10 minutes into the game, a 3-for-0 for Cloud9. Freak, this is what you were talking about, where TSM, some miscommunication, a little bit of a misplay here, and C9 capitalized hard.
Right, so you start out with the standard 2-on-2 where C9's looking to put up aggression. So you watch the first half of it, they go for the battle, and they know they have TF. They also have Rush coming in before Elise is coming in. So Yellow Star gets ulted out, right? Really smart to walk in and pulverize, bait it. TF ulties and like, okay, flash away. But then this is the real big misplay. Haunter TP's in way the hell too early. You see Elise and Azir are still not part of the team, so he dies for absolute free. Now they know it's a 5v4, and that makes it even freer. And you just get these kills with no possible chance of recompense, and that was the game-breaking opening. Because C9 are so damn good at playing with leads, you give them 3 kills for a misplay, that's going to be a 25-minute game.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that the style that C9 is playing. They had basically 4 sources of globals there. We're able to exploit the weaknesses of TSM, right? They have a shaky foundation right now, and like I said, it's been 2 weeks, but is that really enough to actually get everything under control? Well, maybe it is against a different team, because if they're going to play global with fast and loose, they're definitely going to exploit you.
Yeah, TSM on your screen here, they're clearly going to have some stuff to talk about here and maybe retool a little bit going into the next game. And I'm going to come to you, Mark, because when you suffer such a crushing defeat, 25 minutes, and such a lopsided gold lead, does this cause you to question the preparation that you've put in over those 2 weeks going into a best-of-5 series?
If I was TSM, I don't think I'd question my prep quite yet. If you look at how the game played out, they just couldn't get anything done, and it was more their own play than like any kind of prep concern. Like, I know they targeted Rush and he did fine, but if you look at that game, they had TP advantage for a little bit, they got nothing done. They TP in late on their own plays, and they just get picked off and die. And so it's much more like they need to look internally like, how are we playing, than they need to look like, is our prep good?
All right, well, they have a few more minutes to figure all of that out. Now, earlier in the day, we asked players who would have the biggest impact in this series, and we have a response from Razak, who writes, rather, that Jensen will definitely have the biggest impact today. Put him on a carry, let him show his individual domination. I mean, he had a very impressive scoreline on the Twisted Fate there, 9-0-7. So being a part of 16 of the 18 kills for the team, already putting up big numbers.
Right, and he was actually the highest damage in the team as well. It was a devilish performance, 1-6-6-6 for his damage to champions that game. But just really strong. And he doesn't have to be an individual carry, right? He doesn't have to be LeBlanc. It's good, of course, but he can just be the playmaker. And they played around it well. That top lane tower dive, Kindred lane ganks, TFTP's in, and then open up the misplay, which happened. These are good things for C9. They keep playing around strong players. Good for them.
And he's really evolved into an enormous playmaker for this squad. It's not just Rush, it's not just Hyde. Jensen opens up the mid lane for them, and sometimes he just goes to other lanes if he can't open up the mid lane.
Right.
Yeah.
So then talking about that mid lane matchup, where does TSM make an adjustment then, knowing that Jensen has this pool where he can play Varus and poke, he can play TF and affect other lanes, he can play Orianna, be a team fighter. How does Bjergsen crack that kind of shell that Jensen has created that can totally guard his team?
I think it's a bit of a mistake to try and target Jensen. We've seen him perform on so many different carries over the course of the season. He has these different styles where he's making plays for either himself or his teammates. I think it'd be better if they try and get their global game down. We saw C9 with a really global focus comp, and it kind of tore TSM apart. So I think maybe avoiding that mid lane and just getting Bjergsen elsewhere on the map. He was late to every side lane play, and I think getting more coordinated is what they need to do.
Well, a very solid victory for Cloud9 coming out of Game 1. Quick update on the CB LoL Finals taking place today. INTZ swept the #1 seed Keyd Stars in the finals. Now, with that win, they have secured a spot in the upcoming International Wildcard Invitational to compete for a spot in the upcoming mid-season Invitational. So, good on those gents there, hoisting the trophy, proud as they should be, to fight for that opportunity to compete against the best teams in the world at MSI.
It's going to be awesome. I mean, we saw Brazil make waves last year at Worlds, an entirely new team coming out, still a strong region.
Yeah, I was really distracted. I was like, man, I really wish that I was a Spanish football commentator. They sound so amazing over there.
Okay,
It just sounds so great when you're casting League of Legends. It's very fast. It's got a lot of energy in it. So.
Yeah, you remember all like those tricky level 1s and how hyped the casters
Yeah.
got? Yeah, those were crazy.
Oh, man, yes, those level 1s. See, I'm waiting for something like that to come out here. And maybe that's something that TSM needs, and I wonder if they have it up their sleeve.
Word over the wall, headbutt people in.
Exactly, shake it up, because it seems like when you suffer such a crushing defeat, like the thing that will suffer the most, obviously, is the mentality. How are they going to rebound? I mean, TSM has shown their kind of prowess in playoffs in previous seasons, so you like to think with their veteran status they will be able to make the necessary changes, but something as drastic as that might be necessary in order to get them back into it.
Doesn't hurt.
And I think one thing we heard, I don't know if everyone knows, but the coaches can actually listen in on the comms during the games now, and it's definitely a huge advantage if you're the team struggling, because you don't need to ask as many questions like what went right, what went wrong. You can just hear it yourself, and you can start addressing those right away.
Right, so streamlining the process, not having to wade through everyone's stories as to what happened. We have the facts. We can address the issues. Well, we're going to step away while the teams load back onto the stage for Game 2 between TSM and Cloud9. Don't go anywhere. The NA LCS Spring playoffs continue after this.
As C9 advanced towards the inhibitor turret, they're looking